All right, Micah, it's great to see you again. We're sitting here, CEO, Chief Product Officer, rings of power. Tell me what's been happening on the product side.
Yeah, it's been fun. We just got back from High Trust, got to learn a lot about that ecosystem, meet some really good partners, learn more about how companies are protecting themselves in the health tech space. Lots of fun conversations, especially for medical device manufacturers, of how the overlap between some of the FDA's regulations and High Trust and how important all of that is.
Yeah, I think our Chief Strategy Officer, Stephen, spoke at the High Trust conference. Yeah,
he was hilarious. I mean, put a Scottish person in front of a crowd of people and he just had everybody in stitches.
It is a dry humor, but it comes across, doesn't it? Yeah. High Trust is such an interesting standard. It's like incredibly complicated if you do one form of it, and then there's simpler versions.
Yeah.
And I think that those that haven't done it before think it's something they're going to have to do. And those that have, that I've talked to, are like, can I get off this crazy train? Yeah.
It is pretty bespoke. Let's call it that way. There's a lot of other more general frameworks that you can choose to adopt that cover the same thing, that don't require the same amount of rigor, or the same amount of, it's not rigor, but the same amount of
complexity. Yeah. I think that
it's also cheap. I mean, other ones are cheaper to implement too.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
High Trust.
Yeah. I think like most of these things that you and I talk about, it's like, what are your customers telling you that you've got to do?
Right.
Yeah. That's really the leverage point.
Yeah, definitely some of the big health networks require High Trust, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
But if you're not selling into that
big hospital system,
if you're not selling into that market, I'd focus more on ISO 27001, SOC 2, general HIPAA stuff. Lots of other options to kind of get you moving in that direction.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, you wanted to look at one of our new features.
Micah, I'm the CEO. I always want to know what new features are coming out. Will you show us something cool today?
How soon is this feature going to be out? Yeah. So, we've had automation and integrations in our product pretty much from day one. It's been, definitely a critical part of how we help companies prepare and monitor their continuous compliance programs.
Yeah.
One of the integrations that we're really, the most intrigued by is this Terraform wrapper that we use, right? That allows you to use Terraform programming languages inside of our product to collect settings and other information outside of your cloud system. So like AWS, Azure, GCP, all the good ones there. One thing we have heard, though, is that if you're not super familiar with Terraform, or you don't know what resources you're using in those environments, us presenting you with a really flexible integration that allows you to just, kind of really configure that can be a bit of a roadblock. So what we've been working on is a guided setup process for these Terraform integrations. We're calling it Quick Start. Mm-hmm. And essentially what this does is it scans your environment, pulls out, the resources that you're using, auto maps those to the evidence that's required for most compliance programs. And then more excitingly, it actually writes the Terraform code for you.
Is this an AI tool?
Oh, it's always an AI.
Yes, exciting.
So it really tries to remove that barrier for folks if they're not already comfortable writing Terraform. It'll do that for them. Of course, we are always trying to give our customers autonomy over their compliance programs, how they write integrations. So, you can of course edit what the AI writes.
Yeah,
it's always important. But let me show it off here.
And actually, as you're bringing it up, one thing that I think is important, because I find mixed understanding of what Terraform is, even in those that are really technically astute, is that a lot of us have used Terraform to deploy in, like, you can write code and that code will say, build this server, use this operating system, build this firewall, build this database, make these settings. And most of us, that's all we've ever used it for, right, as deployment. But Terraform also allows us to read the settings of a deployment. And that's something that's been really powerful for us, because we have this, I think, appropriate security and network segmentation between what you deploy as being a different set of technology versus what we test and read as being a different network integration.
Yeah. No, I think that's spot on. And you'll hear me refer to that as data sources. So that's how Terraform talks about those read-only commands, essentially, that they provide in their software providers.
Yeah. And each one, like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and there are thousands of Terraform providers, but they all support these APIs based on the software that they've set up. Yeah.
All right. So in our demo instance here, we already have our Terraform integration configured, right? Super easy to do. All we need to do in AWS, at least, is set up a role that our software here, StrikeGraph, can assume permissions from. We're good to go. So that takes all of 3 to 5 minutes at most to kind of get that going. Once the integration is configured, there's a nice handy button here called Quick Start.
Nice.
Super easy. We've already run this in the demo environment, so right now we're able to resume back into the process. But clicking on this will, sort of enter into this WYSIWYG or this guided tour, right, of setting up the Terraform integration. So again, because I'm resuming this, the step that's already happened is the scanning step in terms of reviewing or like going through our AWS environment, identifying which resources are, activated and how they're being used and what those names are. So all that information is already pulled in here.
That's a critical step because we don't assume what your architecture is as much as we read what you've defined as an architecture.
Yeah, exactly. So once it's done that, what Quick Start then provides is it shows here, in this case, 10 different evidence items that we can automate the evidence collection of out of AWS using the Terraform integration here. So you can see, these are really common evidence requirements, monitoring tools, backup schedules, database encryptions, all those fancy things. So
we'll see those from everything from FedRAMP to SOC 2.
Yeah, absolutely. These are all very common. So what happens next is we'll start to step through all of these. And here, we'll start to step through setting up the automated evidence collection for each of these evidence items. So, starting here, monitoring tools, it describes what the evidence needs to be, what we're looking to collect from. And then it asks you of the resources that we found in that scan, which of these are being used to demonstrate monitoring tools, right? So you can see here that it pulled a bunch of CloudWatch alarms, right? Perfect example of a monitoring tool that we're using inside of AWS, right? As soon as one of our EC2 instances hits a certain threshold, it'll send us a notification so we can go in and make sure that, that behavior was intended. If there's any changes we need to make, we can do that pretty quickly, all of those things. Also, it looked through the SNS topics. Again, these are different things that we can subscribe to, to watch for these monitoring tools.
SNS is a very new feature set. Those are like kind of live queue-based instructions and commands.
Yeah,
so that's a new form of architecture in B2B SaaS. Yeah.
So let's just pick one that's easy here. We'll do the status check, failed alarm, right? So when EC2, when we run the status check, if EC2 is not able to respond, again, we have an alarm set up that'll pull that out. So I selected this here. I'm going to scroll down and hit the continue button. Here, what it's doing is it's just going through and reviewing some of that information, as well as generating that Terraform programming link or programming code that we'll then be able to utilize. So
AI.
Yeah, AI. So we reached out to our AI model. The way that we build AI at StrikeGraph, everything's self-hosted. We're not, sending out to an open API, anything like that in some third-party system. Everything is within our AWS firewall. It's all contained. We really take the data and privacy, security, data security and privacy seriously for our customers. So, we know that there's leaks all the time with some of those open source, or not open source, but those commercial products that are out there. And so we want to ensure that we can, really have protection there.
Yeah.
So what's been returned from the AI model that we sent that information to is this pre-configured Terraform data blocks code, right? So here it's already set up. Usually, if you're going to go through and do this manually in our software, which you can do, of course, you would fill this all out yourself. But because we're using Quick Start and we're using that AI tool, it's already been pre-configured. So it's already identified which region the resources are in, which Terraform data source we're going to pull from. So in this case, you can see it's that CloudWatch alarm. It's given it a name so that we know when the evidence is collected, where it came from, and then it's pre-populated the alarm name in here for me in the format that the Terraform Data code expects it to be.
And those queries are really flexible. So one of the things I like about this modality is it might like get me started with these integrations. But if I were looking for a series of tags or a broader query, Terraform is very powerful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and each data source, has its own filtering and configuration settings that you can go and look at. Terraform's documentation is all open source. Our help center links to all of it, so it's very easy to access. And yet, to Justin's point, it becomes really flexible in that way where you can filter down the information that's coming from something like a CloudWatch alarm to just a specific variable if you, want or need to.
Yeah.
So you can see here, we've got, an evidence item here pulled up. What we're going to look for here is a backup schedule, right? And so again, we've already scanned our AWS environment to find out, how we're utilizing backups, generally speaking. And so here we've got the description of the evidence and what we expect this evidence to include. What we've listed out here are all of the different RDS instances that our scan was able to find. So we've got one for our dev database. We've also got one for our assessments team. They've got their own RDS database. And we also have an Elastic file system set up. But we're going to use the RDS database because it is where we have our backup schedule, configured here.
I think one thing that's important here is like your dev database might have a different configuration that you don't want in your audit scope, especially if you've not put in any production data in dev. That's why you have a dev environment. And therefore, when you're going into audit, you really want them to audit on the backup on your production database. Right. And picking the right data to hand over to the auditor helps you make sure that you pass the audit.
Yeah, exactly. So, we were just looking at assessment database, for example. That's way outside the scope of our SOC 2 audit or our ISO audit, because it doesn't have any customer information in it. It's solely an internal tool, all of those things. So to that point, we want to be really specific about what we're monitoring from a compliance perspective.
Yeah.
So here the AI has returned some Terraform code for us to review, right, so that we can go through and collect this information. So, we've sent this out to our AI. Everything's self-hosted. The way we build AI here at StrikeGraph is we try to avoid using any risky third-party tools, right? So we're not using OpenAI or any of those commercial tools out there. Everything is self-hosted inside of our own AWS environment. This allows us to just really take the data security and privacy of our customers' information really seriously. And we have complete control over that. And that's really important for us and, that relationship and that trust that we're building with our customers.
I just also want to say that like us hosting these types of models that write code for our customers or do natural language processing gives us the ability to ensure a level of accuracy in how those things function. Yeah.
So again, we told our AI model that we're going to write some Terraform code for a backup schedule here, and this is what it's returned. So it's let us know that this resource is in US East 2. That's the right region. That looks good. It's going to pull data from the AWS database instance data source from the Terraform library. It gave it a handy name so we can follow along with it, when we go through and review this evidence at a later date. And then it pre-populated the configuration information for this Terraform data source. So here it's got the database instance identifier and the name already pre-populated in here.
And these query tools are really robust for Terraform, right? Like one of the things I love about this way of doing it is the AI is recommending code for us, but now we could manipulate it. So if we were looking for anything tagged a certain value, like everything tagged production or something like that in that particular region, you can really adjust, from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of the documentation from Terraform, is available publicly. We link to it all over in our help center and our products. It's really easy there to reference. So to Justin's point, if you did want to specify, like a specific value on your database, for instance, that you want collected rather than all of the metadata, all of that is available here within the Terraform interface that we've built. So
powerful toolset, Terraform, thousands of data objects in AWS alone. Yeah.
So, I've reviewed this. This all looks correct to me. And I'm going to hit continue here. So the way that this works, right, is it's spinning up a VPC environment. It's running this Terraform, sort of in that virtual cloud. It's pulling that information out of, our, in this case, our dev AWS account. And then it's saving that as evidence information inside of our GRC solution here. It's also configuring that for automated collection so that this can happen in automation behind the scenes, at a frequency to which we can specify. So we can check to make sure that our database is configured for backup, once a week, if we want to just continuously monitor that we have these compliance settings configured in the way that we want them to be.
I think that's always a tricky thing, like how often do I collect evidence or how often am I monitoring?
Yeah.
In a GRC system, really like an auditor rarely needs things more than once a month. And so I'm always really sensitive about when we go into audit, what is the right amount of data? Because there are other types of systems to do like second by second monitoring. That's a little different type of cybersecurity issue than compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And my advice to our customers is to set up the automated evidence collection at a frequency to which you expect the evidence itself to be changing, right? So if you do have values in your AWS environment that maybe get touched at each deployment and you deploy every other week, right, then set that evidence collection up to be, every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you've got a policy document in your Google Drive or your Office 365 environment that you're going to review once a year, you only have to monitor that, like once a quarter, maybe once a year. You can kind of figure that out. So, again, we've built that to be really flexible in StrikeGraph so that, depending on how you're interacting with your compliance needs, you can, really tailor that evidence collection time to what you need.
So cool.
Okay, so Justin, this worked.
Yay!
I know. So you can see here, we've got the success message back. That's great. Backup schedule is now configured for automated collection. And it gives you the option to continue on. But just because we're doing a demo here, I'm actually going to exit out. I'm going to go find that evidence item here in our evidence repository. So I'm going to look up backup. Spell it right. Backup schedule. Here it is. You can see that it's been enabled. And it's got automated collection already turned on, which is awesome. Here's the data that we pulled, right? So here's actually all of that metadata about our dev database instance. That shows, that it's got the backup retention period of 7 days. Also, that this is our database is encrypted and other things like that as well. So now the cool thing is all I have to do here is assign an owner to this. So, I'll take ownership over this since, I'm setting this up. I'll assign my name here. And now you can see this evidence is satisfied. It's set up for automated collection. And we're going to, in this case, collect it every once a year, essentially. But because, we do deploy to our database, somewhat frequently, some little tweaks, changes we do, maintenance kind of changes. I'm going to set this up for every 30 days. We're going to check on this once a month to make sure that we, consistently have that backup schedule configured.
That way, when we go into audit, we have all the samples the auditor will need. There's none of this back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. So now you can see this is set up to recollect next month. Super exciting. And of course, if I did make a change, I could, force a recollection right away. That's always an option. So if we do need a fresh piece of evidence in there, that's really good to go. The other nice thing is I can pop in here and look to see that this evidence satisfies this control, also in backup schedule. And if I take a look at this control, here we can see that this control satisfies 16 different criteria across all the different frameworks that we support. So, not only does it satisfy CIS, HIPAA requirements, but also ISO, NIST, SOC 2, and the list just kind of goes on and on from there. So, again, collect that information once. I've got that set up for automation. And now I can just, allow the software to monitor that piece of data there for me.
It is really cool, Micah. Yeah. I think the things that I love about it is we continue to stand by this pillar that we don't box our customers into a technology architecture, process, security posture at all. Mm-hmm. It's like you're free to innovate and develop. We're going to use our code to read what deployment you've made, and then we're going to use AI to write Terraform code to go collect those settings automatically. Yeah. And we hold really strong to those pillars. And it's just that we believe that customer complexity exists for a reason. That there's a reason that they have a unique architecture. They want to build innovation, and security and innovation can live side by side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
All right. We always go on to the next thing, and CEOs are notorious for being evil creatures, maybe every once in a while. what's next? I'm dissatisfied.
Great.
I know.
Well, obviously we already have a good handful of Terraform integrations in our system, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the big three cloud service providers, but we want to continue to expand that set of integrations for us. And so, right now we're actually working on 3 more Terraform integration providers. One, for GitHub, another one for GitLab, and then a third one for general HTTP requests. So we'll be able to use that also to, monitor web pages or other public API endpoints and pull information out of that as well. So those should all be available in our product before the end of the year, very excitingly. And, that'll just continue to increase the number of data points that our customers can, automate their evidence collection from and monitor with our tools.
I mean, I think about these Git Terraform integrations as being really focused on change management.
For sure.
When I think about the cybersecurity portion of common standards, I think about certainly like, what does your data backup and retention look like? Mm-hmm. What does encryption look like? And then what does the architecture broadly look like? But then the very next thing, and this is more process oriented than it is, cybersecurity, is like, how are you handling change management?
Yeah.
And so much is coded in Git as a technology tool that being able to use Terraform to reach into your Git repo, see the continuous integration, continuous deployment process, and what those settings are will be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I also love the Terraform providers have data sources to collect, like the MR templates, right?
Yeah.
And the status as to whether or not a branch is a protected branch or not.
Yeah.
And so there's just so much information that's available via these Terraform integrations that, really the end result is totally flexible, and there's a lot of different options for our customers to really define what they want to monitor from a compliance perspective.
Yeah. The HTTP connector is really interesting too. We love doing these things where we're like, one integration, many points of data. Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to call this URL and pull that data out. Yeah.
No, that is an exciting one, and we'll definitely continue to understand all of the different use cases behind it. But, really excitingly, we'll be able to, I mentioned monitoring web pages, and this can be really critical for, ensuring that you always have your privacy policy available for your customers, or that, there is a contact page available on your website in case someone finds a bug or can't log in, or, other things like that. We can also just monitor disclaimer agreements that are inside of a, marketing page or other things like that.
Yeah.
For some of the more rigorous finance or fintech related compliance programs too. So
regulatory privacy issues. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to have a lot of different uses, which will be really fun to see.
Micah, thanks as always for showing us what's happening at StrikeGraph.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Anytime.
Yeah.
All right. See you next month.
Bye-bye.